Welcome to another edition of TSA Safety Matters. I'm your host, Greg Kerr from Stakeholder Relations, and today we're with Director and Chief Advisor Shrikant Mangalam with TSA's Public Safety and Risk Management Group, and TSA's Fuels Director, John Marshall, for a few thoughts on TSA's unique application and approach to risk and its effect on public safety. So thanks for being with us, guys.
Thank you. Good morning, Greg.
Now, we produce a report on the state of public safety every year, and we recently published in that paper that we've seen a decrease in fatalities and injuries over a 6-year period. So, Shrikant, how do we account for that?
Well, before I get into the details, Greg, first of all, as you know, TSSA has been, over the last several years, spending a lot of time, effort, and resources in building infrastructure and information to move towards an evidence-based decision-making organization and in a proactive, predictive way. And we've, as part of that, evolved our safety reporting since the last 8-10 years, as long as I've been with TSSA. And as we've improved our data collection ability and the infrastructure, we're getting better at not just using historical information such as incidents and fatalities and injuries, but also being able to predict what we expect to see in the future. So with this approach, we're able to use data that's collected by our inspectors in the field with respect to incident investigations and the trends that we're seeing as part of that, and predict what we expect to see as risk in the future. And that information is valuable for the statutory directors like John to be able to not only deal with the issues that are found in the past, but also to try and proactively manage safety in the future. That is the intent and the goal. So as you mentioned, we've introduced a new metric called fatality equivalence per million people per year. It's a predicted measure that tells you, based on what we've seen in the past, what are the expected number of fatalities in the future as a result of incidents that have occurred, and what is causing them, more importantly, so that we can address the cause. And yes, you're right, over the last 6 years, we've seen a decrease in that predicted measure of what we expect to see in the future. And we hope that a major part of that decrease is as a result of some of the actions that John and the other directors have taken.
Mm-hmm. So what that fatality equivalent, what does that calculation actually mean, the 0.83?
Sure. So if you can think of incidents as having two aspects to it. One, incidents where something's happened, but and somebody got injured or hurt or unfortunately killed, and also incidents where it's just lucky that no one was in the presence of that incident and didn't get hurt, like near misses.
So the two extremes.
So what we've come up with is a methodology to combine the two, to say, okay, here are incidents where people have actually got hurt, and here are incidents where people didn't get hurt, it's just chance or luck. If people had ended up getting hurt, what would have been the consequence? Mm-hmm. The fatality equivalent is a nice way of measuring what is the quantitative impact of the incidents that we've seen in the past and what we expect to see in the future. So it combines incidents with injuries and incidents where they're near misses into this unit of fatality. So for example, this year we predicted that we expect to see 0.83 fatality equivalents per million people per year in the next year. So if you can think of Ontario's population as 13 million, this roughly works out to 10 equivalent fatalities. Doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to see 10 people die as a result of the things that we regulate, but we could potentially have incidents that could cause injuries that can equate to about 10 fatalities. And that is what we've also seen is what we predicted last year and what we predict for the next year. There is a decrease between the two, which is a good sign. So we're moving in the right direction. The other nice thing with using this fatality equivalent per million people per year as a metric is that we're able to benchmark it against some of the international practices in risk tolerability. So one of the measures that is typically used in the developed world is one fatality equivalent per million people per year
Mhm.
as a benchmark.
Mhm.
So if you've hit that, then you're in an unacceptable level. So we are below that benchmark, and it's decreasing. So we're moving in the right direction. Ultimately, we want to reach a point where that fatality equivalent is close to zero. That should be our goal. So.
And with that analysis, we can make those decisions beforehand to actually see it decrease more and more.
That's correct. So, for example, in this case, we know that a major portion of that risk comes from incidents involving carbon monoxide poisoning. That
Mhm.
contributes to a lot of that. We also know what's causing those carbon monoxide incidents, and how much of it can we control and how much of it can we influence.
Mhm.
That's where John comes in.
Yeah, John, you did have success with fuel-fired boilers and carbon monoxide risk in applying this sort of risk analysis.
That's correct, yes.
Could you speak maybe a little about that, and if you've got other things that you're considering under risk?
Sure. Actually, the model that Shrikant talks about has been very useful in the fuels area. So one real true-to-life situation we had was with respect to natural draft boilers, where a number of years ago it came to our attention that we were seeing a higher than normal level of fatalities associated with this type of equipment. And we had formed some opinions about what we thought the root cause was, and through Shrikant's team's analysis, totally gave us a totally different picture of really what the situation was, which led us to, for a number of years, issuing a director's order, and it was late in 2012, we codified those requirements so that there is requirements for mandatory maintenance and inspection on this type of equipment. So, and it's proven to be have a very positive impact. Shrikant's group continues to monitor that for us, but we're seeing some really positive results out of that.
Mhm. And don't you see something crazy like 80% or 85% with maintenance and 94% who have carbon monoxide alarms associated
Absolutely.
with that?
With this program that we've implemented, the uptake's been very beneficial and positive in terms of, as you said, 80% of that client sector now making sure that they have the maintenance on their equipment.
Again, any other areas that you're applying risk?
Actually, there are several areas where this tool and model is very beneficial to us. We're looking at fuel oil tank failures. We've applied in some of the other sectors, pipelines and those kinds of things, where we're looking at a number of things where Shrikant's team's analysis can really help me direct our safety services and allocate resources where we can best have some good safety outcomes.
Mhm. Well, are you looking at any broader application of risk into other fuel areas?
Oh, absolutely. So, for example, in the propane sector, right now that sector has a requirement for annual inspections. They're mandated by the regulation. We're working with the industry and the ministry to implement or introduce a risk-based model that would have them inspected on various time cycles from perhaps anywhere from 6 months to 3 years. So again, very beneficial in terms of TSSA being to allocate resources, but also a benefit to the industry as well to help remove some administrative burden and incent those good safety behaviors that we're looking for out there, and perhaps disincent those who perhaps aren't as safety conscious as we'd like them to be.
Mm-hmm. Have you had any feedback yet from industry on this?
Absolutely. The industry, while this is a fairly new concept to them, are very supportive and looking for us to go forward in implementing this model. So we'll need some regulatory changes in the new year from the ministry, but they're really looking forward to this.
I guess at the end of the day, they want the same thing, right? They I guess they're learning an appropriate application of risk, but they want things to be safe too, right?
Oh, absolutely. I think all of the stakeholders and the safety partners in the fuel industry are looking for the same thing. We're all looking for good, positive safety outcomes, and how finding better ways to do that as we move forward.
Fantastic. Shrikant, is there anything new on the horizon?
Yeah, so one of the things that we want to take forward the work that we're doing here is make this align itself with best practice. And in that context, we're working very closely with other provincial regulators and federal regulators to try and create a best practice standard that would help us benchmark and make sure that we're doing good things as the others are, and also raise the level of some of the other regulators who may be lagging behind, not deliberately, but they might need help and support in being able to apply some of these techniques. So our intent is to be able to move the ideas that we generate and share it with the larger public stakeholder group in the country for sure. So look forward to some of the work that we're doing at the national level on this.
Spread the safety around.
Yes. Yeah.
Excellent. Thanks, Shrikant and John.
My pleasure.
I'm sure we're going to hear more. Stay tuned for more TSA Safety Matters.